What's the most badass response to an insult you've ever heard? My older sister, she sucks, got into it with my brother one day. She called him fat. He threw a shoe at her and she ducked out of the way. She pops up and says, "Huh, you missed me," and got clocked with the other shoe as he yelled, "They come in pairs, female dog." Phenomenal moment. Next story. In high school, there is a rumor this kid got this girl pregnant. Between class periods, one girl said to the supposedly pregnant girl, "Looks like you've gained a few pounds. Could it be baby weight?" Without missing a beat, the alleged baby daddy turned around and said, "Oh, really, Rachel? Then what's your effing excuse?" The hallway went silent. Jaws dropped. Rachel started crying and ran off. This was 2001, and I remember it like it was yesterday. The girl didn't even end up being pregnant. Next story. A friend in high school on her way to a track meet. He was staring at a car in the parking lot that was really nice when this D-bag saw him. D-bag says, "Why bother looking at that when you know you'll never be able to get one?" My friend replies, "The same reason you watch adult content." The entire bus erupted, and it's still one of the funniest things I've ever heard. Next story. When I was just a young boy, maybe 8 to 10 years old, my uncle that talked too loud and too much was visiting our home during a family get-together, blabbering away. Of course, family members tolerated this behavior to keep the peace. That is until this time when he suddenly stopped talking, looked at little me and asked, "You don't talk much, do you?" I replied, "Sure, when I get a chance." I remember the inside of our house was filled with everyone laughing as I looked around wondering what happened. Next story. Saw a band with my super tall friend Jay. He was around 6'5", 196 centimeters. A girl kept dancing up on Jay, getting flirty. Jay had a girlfriend and wasn't reciprocating, just smiling politely, mainly focusing on the band. We made our way to the bar later, and the girl's unusually short, angry boyfriend confronted Jay. Jay's a funny guy. He was able to defuse the situation with a laugh. A few minutes later, though, short boyfriend returned with 3 short friends. They surrounded Jay, yelling at him, insisting he follow them outside so they could destroy him. Jay says, "Oh, are you gonna form a human pyramid so you can punch me?" Okay, this is the first one we've read so far where I'm just like, damn, burn, oh my goodness. Yeah, human pyramid, 3-on-1. One of me is still bigger than 3 of you. That's hilarious. Next story. In a video of a cop arresting what appeared to be a privileged and arrogant guy in his teens, the kid threatens the cop with, "Do you know who my father is?" And the cop says, "If you don't know, how do you expect me to know?" Next story. I used to work at a movie theater. One of my coworkers was helping a guest who looked like he was about 20 years old or so. He couldn't afford a ticket for the movie and was trying to get my coworker to lower the price, which of course he didn't. Then the guy says, "Man, my shoes cost more than your paycheck." My coworker replied, "Is that why you're broke as F?" Not sure if that counts. I found it to be effing hilarious. Next story. Female friend tending bar when a guy in that bar publicly said that he wanted to go in her panties. Why? There's already an a-hole there. Bar exploded with laughter. Guy was red-faced, left, and never came back. Next story. Was doing theater at a community college in my youth, and a couple guys in the show were getting into it over something. Then this happened. Guy 1 says, "Shut up before I slap you across the face with my 9 inches of limp chicken." And Guy 2, without missing a beat, "Oh, you're gonna slap me 3 times?" What made it truly great was the speed of the response. It was instant. Next story. Go Whitlam, Australian Prime Minister, in response to Sir Winston Turnbull shouting in Parliament, "I am a country member." "I remember," replied Whitlam. Okay, so I don't get this one at all. Someone please explain in the comments why this is funny. Hopefully I can get it and laugh at it. Next story. While going over the syllabus on the first day of class, the professor mentioned that he doesn't give makeup tests unless the student has a medical emergency. A jock asked, "Yo, professor, what if I can't take the test due to pure and utter sexual exhaustion?" Without missing a beat, the professor shot back, "Then I suggest you use your other hand to fill out the Scantron if you don't want a 0. Next story. When we were in our final year of high school, a friend's dad told us about an exchange between 2 drunk colleagues at the end of staff party of the company he worked for. Apparently, a drunk guy basically told one of the women from the office that he was coming home with him to, quote, "sit on his face." She replied by asking, "Why? Is your nose bigger than your privates?" Fast, efficient, brutal. Guy deservedly got flack for a long time afterwards, too. And if it happened in this day and age, he'd be lucky to still have a job. Next story. Working as a behavioral therapist, I hear a rather confrontational staff engaging in basically an argument with a special needs client. Staff says, "You think you're the big bad wolf, don't you?" The client says, "Yeah, where's your grandma at?" I slipped out of the garage before anyone heard me laughing. Next story. Once I heard one that's legendary. 2 gamers playing, one male, one female, both talking trash. I don't remember what the male said first, but the female napalmed him. I'm gonna find your father and F him and have his baby so he can actually have a child he loves. Next story. When my biological mom, who lost me due to neglect, bashed me for, quote, keeping her grandchild away from her, and branded me a bad mom, my response was, at least I still have my kid. Next story. A group of dudes went to a bar with a local band playing. One obnoxious dude in the group kept loudly interrupting the set and killing the vibe. The singer dropped the set, looked at the guy, and said, do I come down to where you work and knock the sailors' junks out of your mouth? Next story. Maybe not badass, but it was the funniest. When I was at uni, my flatmate, who was this unbearably stuck-up rich girl, was sitting with my and our neighbor, a very sweet and funny gay man who took a lot of care of his appearance, went to the gym, etc. And for some reason, this girl pointed out how big my friend's pecs were. He didn't seem to think anything of it, but she kept on for a minute or so and finished with, well, I suppose they do say when it comes to boobs, men like a handful to grab, don't they? And without missing a beat, he replied, that must be why you're single. I almost fell out of my chair laughing. Next story. A drunk teen girl was trying to push her way through to get to the front of a concert. People weren't moving because there was actually no more room. It's below freezing and she's in shorts and a tank top. She turns to a woman, who is very obviously wearing a bunch of layers and not overweight, and is pissed she won't let her through, so she says, you're just a fat female dog. The bundled up, sober woman says, you can call me fat all you want, but I can lose weight and you'll always be an idiot. It was epic. Young girl turned around disappointed into the masses without another word. Next story. A girl in my physics class was listening to late teen boys talk all semester and then she fired back. She held her fingers apart about the length of a cigarette and said, girls are only bad at math because boys keep telling them this is 10 inches. Legendary. Next story. I once had a manager talk some crap to me about something and said, we can take it outside. I said, okay, but I'll be coming back in alone. The entire kitchen staff laughed their asses off. Next story. I brought my Gundam models to show and tell in middle school, and when the super female dog in the making cheerleader chick made fun of me in front of everyone, my teacher said, you have nothing to say, you brought nothing to share, and you have no personality that would make you interesting. As a troubled kid who got bullied a lot, this was the equivalent of a effing paladin stepping in and stepping up for me. I love that teacher. Next story. I read it in a book recently, and it was a woman finally cutting out their toxic, narcissistic dad from her life. Mom was leaving him too, and he cut off the brother for putting boundaries down already. Your world is about to be as small as your mind. Next story. Kinda tooting my own horn here, but I was in a fight with a guy on Facebook. Dude called me a queer idiot and said I had AIDS. I replied, how could I have AIDS? I didn't have sex with your mom. It gets better. He said, my mother wouldn't have sex with a queer idiot like you, to which I responded, she had sex with your dad? Yeah, he blocked me after that. Next story. Overheard a lesbian get called a douche by someone and she clapped back with, tell me more about how I clean pussy out. That bachelorette party left the gay bar shortly thereafter. Next story. I was working at a teaching hospital and had gone out and had sex with, a couple of times, an attending doctor who was probably about 5'6". I quickly figured out he was pretty much a pompous ass, and since I had met someone else who was a bit younger than I was, and we started dating, I broke things off with the doctor. He was pissed because he couldn't believe I was dumping him, so he grilled me about my boyfriend and I was honest. A couple months later, I saw him in the hallway with a group of medical students who were on his rotation, and he laughingly called out to me, hey G, how's your little friend? I turned around, looked straight at him and said, oh, he's bigger than you are. The students laughed, and I turned and walked away. I'm sure he wondered in what way my BF was bigger. Both, lol. Next story. My mom and I got into a very heated argument, and she called me a little son of a female dog. Right off the cuff, I responded, no, I'm the daughter of one. I will never forget the dead silence, or my dad's head slowly appearing over the back of the couch like... It was a once-in-a-lifetime zinger at the right time in the right place. My dad told me after that he was sure he was about to watch my mom wallop me so hard it would make my head spin. Next story. There is a teacher at Dad's school who had a lazy eye. A kid was racing through the hallway and ran into him. He yells, why don't you look where you're going? The kid replies, why don't you go where you're looking? I'd say there's about a 10% chance that actually happened, but whatever, it's funny. Yeah, first time I've heard this, that is very funny if someone says, why don't you look where you're going? I'm like, why don't you go where you're looking? In that case, I guess that would be like into someone's phone screen. Am I right? Am I right? No? No. Next story. At being told I'm a drunk, I replied, "Indeed, I'm drunk, madame, but in the morning I shall be sober, whereas you shall remain ugly." I believe a quote by Winston Churchill. Next story. Guy in college got called a charity case because he wore secondhand clothes. Without missing a beat, he goes, "Yeah, and I still look better than you and your dad's money." Whole room went silent. Even the guy's own friends were like, dang. Next story. This guy would bully me in high school. We were in a childcare class for people interested in early childhood education, so it was a vag fest. The only two guys in class treated me like absolute crap, while my fellow sisters just looked on and got their panties wet for the chance to get their attention. Guy says, "Have you ever even had a boyfriend before?" Me. "Why? Are you jealous? I've probably had more than you." All the girls around him pissed themselves with laughter as he pretended not to get it. This moment is what made him never bully me again. Next story. I live in a very machismo area. I was also raised up north and grew up poor with a dad who liked to pretend his kids weren't girls, so very tomboy in a lot of ways. At work, some guy was talking about cat trouble, and I piped up with some thoughts. He then says, "Can I be the man here?" I looked him up and down, and then dead in the eye and said, "You can try," then went silent. He had nothing else to add and walked out of the break room, and the ladies and I laughed. Next story. One lovely spring day, I had my car windows down after a good lunch. I wasn't paying enough attention as I pulled out of the parking lot and almost had a very slow collision with a 50-something guy in a convertible, a Mazda Miata. It was my fault, but no harm, no foul, right? Well, not to this guy. He starts chewing me out. Bad, really laying into me, calling me a dumbass and such, and I especially didn't like it because my girl was right there in the car. So I said to him, "I'm so sorry. I would never do anything to hurt your wife's car." Next story. I don't know if it's badass per se, but one recently from the movie Saturday Night stuck with me, lol. If you want my comeback, you're gonna have to scrape it from the back of your mom's teeth. Next story. Me, at 9 years old, say something under my breath at the end of an argument with my mother. She says, "I heard that," and I say, "You were supposed to." Mic drop, explosions, standing ovation. Next story. My two daughters. We were having work done on the house and there was white powder in the lawn where they had been cutting trim. My youngest picks some up and tells my oldest it's fairy dust and to make a wish and blow on it. My oldest says, "I want you to not fight with me ever again." The youngest looks her dead in the eye and says, "I don't think I have enough fairy dust for that." My youngest is still queen of the slapback. Next story. Not gonna tout it as the best, but a jerk once was trying to get me to react by insulting me. But he was being obvious about it. Ignoring him wasn't working, so I turned to him and said loud enough for the adjacent crowd to hear, "I might have cared about this whole thing if you'd mattered to anyone at all," and then just turned my back to him. Next story. Still proud of one of mine. I, female, walked into the construction office for a new high-rise we were building. I was coming in to run layout for the project and checking in with the super for the very first day. Old dude sees me walk through the door and immediately says very loudly, "Hey, you're not allowed in here. This is the boys' club." Without hesitation, I responded, "I'm not asking for effing permission," and kept walking. Next story. In Keith Richards' autobiography, I can't remember exactly, but he gets in a bar fight or something along those lines. The guy instigating says something like, "I fed your mother." Keith responds, "Well, yeah, somebody had to. You want me to call you daddy?" Who knows how embellished it is, but I think of it as badass because of how much it would blindside the person thinking they had the upper hand with their insult. Next story. I used to smoke, and while we were playing pool, an ex-boyfriend's friend once said, because I had a cigarette hanging out of my mouth, "Have I ever told you how unattractive you are when you smoke?" And without missing a beat, I said, "Have I ever told you how unattractive you are?" And yes, I know smoking is stupid and gross, and I quit ages ago. Next story. I was a young teen and wore my hat backwards at times. My gramps commented that it's been shown that your IQ drops the more your hat is turned. I looked at him, looked at his World War II era military portrait hanging on the wall, pointed and said, "So what happens when your hat is turned to the side and tilted on your head like that?" He looked at me for a few beats, snorted, and walked out of the room. My mother could barely contain herself. Next story. I used to busk years ago, drumming on buckets outside nightclubs. One night, I had a pretty decent crowd around dancing, enjoying themselves. One girl walked over and gave me like 20 bucks or something. I can't remember how much, but it was a good amount for the time. She went and sat down watching. Then two Asian girls walked past and she yells, "Go back to your own country, you effing Asians," or something. It was effing awful. I stopped, stood up, grabbed the money, walked over to her and gave back the money and told her to F off in front of the whole crowd. They were all watching. It was beautiful. She left. Everyone was pretty stoked about that. Next story. In 11th grade, this guy Mike and his friends bullied me in chemistry class. Unfortunately, Mike and his friends would follow me to class and make remarks about how ugly I was and even try to trip me when I was walking to class. Everything happened before getting through the door, and they never dared do anything in front of our teacher. So it was a he said, she said if I reported it. One day, our teacher is handing back a test we had taken a few days before. My teacher places Mike's test on his desk face down and said out loud, "Mike, another F." I get my test, and I'm pretty happy that I got an A, despite having another run-in with Mike and his friends on the way to class. Mike's friend saw me smiling about my grade, leans out of his seat and goes, "Hey, did you know Mike's dad has a Mercedes?" Mike chimed in something about me probably being too poor, so I turned to him and responded out loud, "Wow, Mike, you actually know what a Mercedes looks like?" Mike's face fell. Probably the most satisfying part was finding out that Mike not only failed chemistry, he had to repeat 11th grade. Next story. I was 19 and was working part-time in an assisted living facility while putting myself through college. The girls were all so catty, so I just kept my head down and did my job. But I got to hear a lot of crap that way. Two girls in particular really had it out for each other. During a particularly nasty argument, one girl said, "You have a big mouth, female dog," to which the other replied, "Your boyfriend likes my big mouth." I choked on my coffee. Next story. I was at a restaurant with my ex. For context, I'm black, he's white. We were in Long Island. We were seated next to a group of older white men, and one of them made a racist comment, and the others laughed. I just looked at him and said, "Did you hear that?" He was completely unfazed and said, loudly enough for them to hear, "Yeah, but don't worry about it. Those women are all so old, they're probably gonna die soon." Their table went silent. Even I stared at him like, "Geez, dude." He never changed his expression, didn't even look at them. They just sat there and didn't say another word until they asked for the check and left. Yes, PSA to old people, you guys are not immune just because you're old from making insensitive and racist comments. Keep your mouth shut. Next story. It was one my friend said to this guy at a party. He was trying to fight him for whatever reason, and everyone was instigating the fight and he just wasn't having it. I mean, this guy was saying all kinds of things he can to get under his skin and make him mad. Finally, he just said to this guy, "You know there's only two people that can piss me off, and that's my parents. So either you aspire to become a woman, or I just don't think you're man enough." Everyone just went, "Oh!" at the same time. Next story. In a nightclub in the UK, a group of us lads were standing around drinking beer, when someone pointed out this tall, beautiful lady in a long, figure-hugging, split dress smoking a cigarette in a holder alone at the bar. The Welshman in our group said, "Hold my beer, I'm going in." He swaggered over, grinned, and said, "Hi, I'm Jeff." Ever so slowly, she looked him up and down, took a drag on her cigarette, and paused. Then, oh so carefully, she said, "F off, Jeff." It was a complete crash and burn that's still discussed 40 years later. Next story. One time in chef school, I was being bickered at by a super uptight, neurotic student over something. I got him back with, "Martin, if I ever wanted to be criticized by a virgin, I would pray." No one else heard it, but it was perfect. Next story. Maybe tooting my own horn, but I'm still proud of myself for firing back at the resident awful person at my high school who was accosting me, a trans man, for not having a chicken during gym class. I was half asleep, so it just slipped out. At least I stopped looking. "We'll probably get in," and they all clapped reply for adding this, but he literally never spoke to me again after that. Next story. I went to a Jeff Durham show a few weeks back, and at the end, Peanut was answering some questions from the crowd that were written down on these cards. One card read something along the lines of, "I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to tell you that my mom died just before she could come with me to see you. I have her empty seat next to me." Jeff was quiet in response until Peanut said, "Well, that's what you get, Jeff. If you would have started your show on time, the lady might have still been alive." I know this is all Jeff talking, but it was such a perfect response. Next story. I was hopping onto Mic Up to chat with a friend when I found her arguing with someone else. The dude she was arguing with was screaming at her for her feminine avatar. At the time, my friend was transitioning into a woman, so this made her day. Then she shot back, as quickly as she could, "Sweet, you think my avatar looks like a girl? Thanks, dude, and I think you should fix your avatar because it doesn't quite display your big mouth as big as it should be." The dude didn't talk for a second, and there was a group of about 10 to 20 people already watching the argument, and at least half of them were, coincidentally, wielding trans support gear. Being transphobic at that moment would have been a death sentence. There were several people laughing. The dude just left without another word. Least to say, me and her made a new hobby about shutting down homophobia and transphobia for fun. Next story. During a company presentation, these two managers were always competing. After the presentation's done, I heard Manager A whispering to Manager B, I sat beside A, saying, quote, "You really think you're better than everyone, don't you?" Manager B was quiet for a while. I thought she didn't hear A. Then she replied, "I don't think that. I just don't waste time proving myself to people who already decided I'm not. And I keep that to heart in any task I do in the office." Next story. I'm biased, but it might have been mine. 1993, I'm a junior in high school and had been bullied by a real redneck kind of guy. One day in the hallway, he pulls the infamous, "If I wash my privates 1,000 times, would you suck it?" A popular question among high school students in that era. Of course, if you say no, then you're called a dirty chicken sucker and everyone has a laugh. Luckily, I had more wit than the average bear. The conversation goes like this. Redneck, "Hey you, if I wash my chicken 1,000 times, would you suck it?" And I go, "Let me ask you a question. What's wrong with your chicken that you need to wash it 1,000 times before you thought it was clean? Also, why do you want me to suck your privates? I'm a guy. Is that your thing?" You could have heard a mouse pissing on a cotton ball in that hallway. Next story. I have a sticker on my car that says, "Mind your own effing uterus." I came out of the grocery store to a guy waiting behind my car to confront whoever was driving it. As I walked past him to get into my car, he said, "You know abortion is murder, right?" I replied, "How else are we going to keep more dumb Fs like you from being born?" Next story. I was walking in Boys Town, Chicago, and I saw a couple kissing on the street. Another group of people walked by them, and one blurted out, "Ugh, get a room." The couple immediately stopped kissing, and one of them turned to the group and said, "Female dog, I don't need a room. I own the whole house." And honestly, the quick wit to come up with that and the confidence to blurt it out to a group of people in public. Holy aura. Next story. At the gym, spotting my 6'2" buddy on the bench press. A smug 5'7" bodybuilder who's built like a fire hydrant starts raging on my buddy about lifting girly weights. "You'll never be as strong as me, blah blah blah." Pete stands up and says to this guy, "You're right, I might never be as strong as you, but I know you'll never be as tall as me." Next story. Best response I ever heard was in a pretty manly, macho sort of place I worked at. One guy there, Dan, was openly gay, which was pretty ballsy. One guy was bickering endlessly about the job, management, everything, and very loudly says, "Working here is like taking it in the ass every day like a little female dog. But you'd know all about that, wouldn't you, Danny?" Without missing a beat, Dan says, "You're the expert. I heard what your ex-wife is doing to you in court." Guy number one didn't say a single word. He turned a deep shade of purple and walked out of the room. Next story. To my 15-year-old stepson, who was pushing his luck, called me a mother effer when showing off to his friends. "Sorry, Nick, didn't think you could hear us." His friends enjoyed that one. Next story. Buddy of mine is 6'4", damn near 300 pounds, and liked to wear fuzzy pink slippers out to bars back when we were younger. Usually folks don't mess with a dude that big, but sometimes someone will get it in their head that beating up the biggest guy at the bar is a good idea. So some dude walked up to my friend and said, "What kind of F-word wears pink slippers to a bar?" To which my friend replied, "Getting beat up is embarrassing enough, but getting beat up by a guy in pink fuzzy slippers is gonna be next level for you." Next story. In junior high school, a bunch of mean girls were running around asking the quieter girls, "Hey, are you a virgin?" Heard this kind of meek girl answer back, "No, but my mother is." Everyone busted up laughing. Next story. Not quite a response to an insult, but he got me good. I was reminiscing with my boyfriend about our first date, and how his eye contact was so sharp and unwavering that I was really struggling to maintain it. I was worried he was going to think I was uninterested or something. He said, "Oh yeah, wasn't that at that Thai place?" "Yep, that's the one." Now, for reference, I have a noticeable lazy eye. He said, "To be honest with you, I was just trying to figure out which eye to look at." I can't remember the last time I laughed so hard. Literally gasping for breath to avoid death by asphyxiation. Next story. My sister used to work at a grocery store. The store had a policy where other departments could not grab stuff from different departments. Example, if you needed something from the deli, you would have to ask a deli person and not the bakery person. During her last couple weeks, she had a customer come in, a girl in her late teens or early 20s with a cup of soup. Girl comes up to her and says in a really rude tone, "Hey, I need a lid for my soup." My sister, about to tell her she cannot get a lid as she worked in bakery and she would need to find someone in charge of that department, doesn't get a word in before the girl says, "Did you hear me? I need a lid." Sister again tries to speak before this girl asks in a really snide tone, "Do you speak English?" Finally able to get a word in, my sister's responds with, "Yeah, but I don't speak female dog," and walks away. Next story. My boyfriend used to have two roommates. One of his roommates has a brother who spent most of his free time at their house. He's a good friend and we love hanging out with him, so it wasn't a problem until he just stopped going to his own home. After the fourth week of sleeping on the couch, my boyfriend said to him, "It's getting really hard to miss you." He looked like a deer in headlights as he processed what he meant. Next story. Not exactly a response to an insult, but it was a tremendous response to a dressing down. I'm Australia based, went to a strict Catholic private school, all boys. Even in 1998, we still had the cane, well after most schools had banned it. When I was in maybe ninth grade, I met Eddie. He was in the year above me. Eddie was a mother effing enigma. Super strange, super eccentric, fiercely intelligent, and free thinking. He was a metal guy, obviously. Come to think of it, if you're picturing Eddie Munson, you wouldn't be super far off. Anyway, in spite of our normal, strictly enforced attire of ties and blazers and pulled up socks, we had a free dress day for some reason or another. This was rare. On the day, many of us opted to wear band shirts. It was the 90s after all, and Eddie was no different. I rocked a Body Jar shirt. My pal Will went with Pantera, and Eddie wore his favorite Cradle of Filth shirt. I'm going off memory here, so apologies if I have this slightly wrong, but as I recall, it had a picture of a naked nun on the back, crucified upside down, with the text, "Dead chicks can't say no." Personally, I don't think he wore it as a fan of the band. I think his inner Antichrist just clawed its way out of him. Anyway, he was getting reprimanded by the school principal, who I'd classify as a staunchly religious man, and a stickler for dress and presentation code. And as reprimand was underway, some of us gathered around the office door to listen in. The principal was tearing poor Eddie to shreds. He gave him the cane and berated him along the way. This obscene behavior, "You're an embarrassment to the school, you're going to amount to nothing, look at you, you're a disgrace, you always present as scruffy, your hair is way too long." Then Eddie finally responded in a cadence so confidently indifferent I could practically hear the accompanying shrug. Jesus had long hair. He got expelled on the spot.